Welcome to the United Kingdom, or more precisely, the City of London. The subject of this film is a 33-year-old West African man, Joseph Eros. 8 years ago, Joseph was forced to flee his native Liberia. During his relatively short life, he had witnessed savagery and atrocities during 2 civil wars, including the killing of both his parents. Finally, when riots broke out again in 2004, Joseph was attacked, brutally beaten, thrown into a pit with many other bodies and left for dead. Joseph came to the UK in 2004. He was suffering from severe post-traumatic stress disorder brought on by the violence he had experienced. He believed he would be treated with dignity here and would find a sympathetic ear for all the appalling events he had witnessed. How wrong he was. His request for asylum was turned down. For reasons explained in the film, he cannot be returned to Liberia. The UK government has abandoned him to a very undignified life of destitution.
A person can claim asylum based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, and that their country is unable to protect them.
This film is called We Do Accept Asylum Seekers in Britain, Don't We? It tells the story of Joseph Eros, which echoes the stories of thousands of other failed asylum seekers in the same situation. Curtis, how did you and Andy Iliff become involved in Joseph's case?
Well, my good friend Andy, around 5 years ago, informed me about Joseph Eros and told me what he'd been suffering through. So I met up with him. I believe it was at a friend's house, Glyn Yates, who he was actually looking after at the time. He was suffering from Parkinson's disease, and Joseph was there taking care of him, washing him, cleaning him, and that's how I met him. I went to Glyn's house and we met Joseph there, and that's where Joseph told me about what he had to endure back in Liberia.
I spoke earlier with Joseph Eros about his current situation and about his post-traumatic stress disorder that was brought on by the appalling incidents he'd witnessed in his native Liberia. Here's what he had to say. This is Joseph Eros, who is the subject of our film today. Joseph came from Liberia to Great Britain approximately 8 years ago and claimed asylum. And this film is about the problems he's had since then. Joseph, this interview, I know, is very difficult for you. It brings back memories that you'd probably prefer forgotten. When you knew you had to leave Liberia in order to stay alive, how did you actually get away?
For someone to have a difficult place to live, and you see yourself, you are not safe. Thank God I have someone just the way someone saw me in my situation, the way I was being beaten and wounded, and I find a person that took me out from the country.
Right.
And I told him that I cannot be safe in this place.
No. So you I believe you went first to Austria.
Yeah.
To Vienna, to be precise.
Yeah. So I was not know where I'm going to anyway. Someone just, as a person took me, was
to get out. Yes, right. When you were there, was it always your intention to try to get to the UK?
It was not my intention, because the person that took me out, he is one that still gave me access to leave the place.
Right.
I didn't know it was a white country. I didn't know where I was before. He didn't, when I get there and I said, this is Austria.
Right.
No, that is, then enough. Okay, I need to out from this place.
Right. So from Austria, did you want to come to the UK?
I was not my intention to come to UK. It was
just the way it worked out.
It worked out.
Right. Okay. And unfortunately, when you got here, things didn't work out quite the way you expected. You actually complied completely with the United Nations recommendation for asylum seekers. You declared that you would come in illegally, and you asked for asylum.
Yeah, that's what I did. What I present, even though it was a forged passports. You know, when you are running for your life, the means to out the country. This is why when I get it there to the airport, I present the passport to them that I'm not safe.
And asked for asylum.
Ask for asylum, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. But in spite of the fact that you did everything correctly, you were then arrested and jailed.
Yeah. I was, before I gave them, but I said, I'm not safe. I need to be rescued. Then they dropped me to a room.
Yeah.
Then give me time. I said, I want to take asylum. They couldn't listen to me.
No.
What is said that it's offense to have a passport, to it's not their passport to this country. I say, I came to take asylum, took asylum. Then unfortunately they just called for police.
And yet what you did was follow the recommended procedures recommended by the UN.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was in approximately 2005, wasn't it? About 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Let me read to you the statement made by the UK Border Agency run by the British Home Office. The UK Border Agency now aims to conclude all new asylum applications within 6 months. This means that within 6 months, a successful applicant will start integration into life in the United Kingdom. An unsuccessful applicant will return home either voluntarily or by enforced removal. Yet you've been here for 8 years, Joseph.
Yes.
How has that happened?
It was hard. And in that 8 years, I will be castrated. Staying from detention, priest to detention, handcuffed. No, it was not easy for me.
No.
It was not easy for me.
And yet they still haven't finished processing.
Now I'm still in the process, still battling.
After 8 years.
Battling.
That's absolutely incredible. The Home Office has made it as difficult as possible for you by relocating you several times in places as far apart as London and central Scotland.
Yeah.
What sort of problems did that present for you?
No, if I start what they took me around for this United Kingdom by going to from Coventry to Birmingham, from Birmingham to Manchester, from Manchester to Asylum, Portsmouth. Those different detention which I go through was not easy for me.
So presumably, in each place you had to find a new solicitor.
Which I did.
So if you'd formed a good relationship with a solicitor, then they moved you. You had to start all over again.
Yeah. When if like someone want to sit a place, and that place is getting better, but if they found that it's getting better, I want to get my case all right, they'll put me down to another place.
Do you think that was deliberate?
Yes, I believe that.
Yeah. Sounds like it. Yeah. At the moment, you must sign on in a Home Office centre, and the one that's been allocated to you is on the opposite side of central London from where you live. Do you get any financial support in travelling?
No.
And yet you have to go there and be on time.
You have to be there. If I don't do that, I believe they will take me back to detention again. Now, it's not easy for me.
No, of course not.
I'm not money. They didn't give me money. No housing, no, just like they just left me abandoned.
Right.
No?
Right. And each time you go to these centres, you actually fear that you're going to be arrested, because that's happened several times, hasn't it?
Yes. I fear all the time. When I wake up in the morning, it's every Tuesday anyway, every week.
Right.
If I'm going, I'm full of fear, sweating. No, getting there, you see a lot of queue. I mean, I might spend hours before I get to for my turn. You know, when I finish, you have to say I will be happy when I finish signing. They take my paper, I saw it here. Go, I will be happy. Things follow there, I will be fear for a week again.
Right.
No.
Now, during one of these arrests, you explained to the police that you were ill because you'd been officially diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
And then you also had an attack of Bell's palsy, didn't you?
Yeah.
presumably these were brought on by the appalling things you'd experienced. Were you given adequate treatment?
Not really. I could remember the last detention I go, which is 2 years detention. The way they treat me, it was so bad. They said that I know myself, what I feel in that moment. I told them I'm having her pain, and that pain was going through my neck to my hands.
Wow.
Then in the night I will not sleep, but my roommate know what I'm going through. But it might help me to press the bed. Say, okay, this man is not okay, all right.
Right.
When I get to the clinic, I told them this is what I feel. They said that just go and take paracetamol. I said, this is more than paracetamol. I need special treatment.
Now you also you went to hospital to get special treatment.
I do.
But during your stay there, which I think was for 8 days, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a week.
A week.
Yes.
You were actually handcuffed to the bed.
Yeah.
Permanently, so that you couldn't turn over in bed.
I was in torture.
And you had to ask for permission to go to the toilet every single time.
When I go to toilet, they will check me and security with hand and my hand. I will be inside toilet. The security will be having the chain in his hand. They will just treat me as a dog. But I was in pale.
Because this reminds me of the sort of treatment that we've been appalled at that's come out of places like Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
Of short shackling and manacling people to beds. It doesn't sound like something that should be happening in the United Kingdom. But it obviously has. Now, after that, for a period of 2 years, from 2011 until the middle of this year, you were actually tagged, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the purpose of that tag was so that the authorities knew exactly where you were.
I feel so. Maybe because they know so that I will know where I am.
Yeah. Now, in spite of the fact that you were tagged and they knew exactly where you were, they used to ring you up frequently in the middle of the night.
It was 3 times in the night. They called the line that they brought to my room. 3 times I would not jump up,
So it disturbed your sleep?
It disturbed my sleep. I was having fear every night. I would be alert in sleeping. When they call me, I know as to pick the phone. Say, I'm at home. Why are you calling me?
Yes.
He said the machine is not moving. I said, I'm at home, I'm sleeping.
You don't move a lot in your sleep, really, do you? No. Joseph, your story is harrowing and a stain on a country that in the past I and millions like me have believed to be a fair-minded and compassionate nation. It seems that many things have changed in the United Kingdom. I wish you well in your quest for asylum. Thank you very much for doing this interview for us today.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So you have met Joseph Eros and heard his pitiful tale of terror, ill-treatment and denial. Joseph lives in fear. The fear generated by the atrocities he witnessed and the depth and lasting qualities of tribal differences in Liberia and the rest of Africa. Joseph has suffered from these for over 8 years. In the UK, perhaps we should have learned something about this from the tribal differences in Northern Ireland. Joseph's story is not unique. At the current time, estimates for the number of failed asylum seekers who cannot, for one reason or another, be returned to their country of origin vary. The organisation Still Human Still Here estimated in 2005 that there were 283,000. In 2007, Refugee Action suggested over 200,000. In 2009, the London School of Economics estimated over 500,000. That was 4 years ago. The UK government has simply abandoned these people. They live in destitution. They have no access to benefits, food, healthcare or clothing allowances. You will not see them begging on the streets because they fear that the UK authorities will rearrest them. Many will not visit non-governmental help centres for food and clothing for the same reason. Such is their fear of returning to the hell they escaped from in their native country. This is Caring Britain in 2013. Joseph Eros was born in Liberia in February 1980. He lived in Lofa County in the north of the country. He's a member of the Kran tribe. Between 1989 and 2003, Liberia suffered with two horrific civil wars. The death toll was enormous. During the second of these wars, Joseph witnessed both his parents being murdered. In late 2004, further rioting broke out. Joseph was 24. In one incident, whilst demonstrating peacefully against the violence, Joseph was struck over the head with a gun, savagely beaten and thrown into a pit, along with many other bodies, and left for dead. He still bears the scars on his back from this incident. Joseph Eros did not die. He crawled out of that pit and realised he had to get out to save his life. With the help of an influential friend, he escaped Liberia and by a circuitous route arrived in the UK in 2005. At the airport, Joseph followed the United Nations directive on what to do when you arrive in the new country. As the UN website states, asking for asylum is not a crime. He held his false passport up high, as directed by the UN, declared himself illegal and asked for asylum. Joseph speaks a patois from his native Lofa County in the north of Liberia. He speaks moderate English, but with a heavy African accent. To understand him requires patience and concentration. He was accorded neither in his initial interview. His reward for following the correct procedure, Joseph was given a custodial sentence. He was sent to Chelmsford Prison for 1 year for attempting to enter the country by deception. On his release from prison, the Home Office needed to verify his nationality. He has no means of identification. Instead of a face-to-face interview at the Liberian embassy, all Joseph received was an interview over the telephone, where his heavy accent meant that understanding him was difficult. The embassy official found it much easier to put the phone down and tell the Home Office that Joseph wasn't Liberian. From that point, no other efforts have been made to verify his Liberian nationality. The UK government have nowhere to return him to. Joseph has been suffering from severe post-traumatic stress disorder since late 2004, brought on by the horrors he witnessed in Liberia and exacerbated by his treatment in Britain and the lack of management of his PTSD. He has been diagnosed twice with the condition by experts, including the Maplesbury Clinic in London. One problem for Joseph is that in 2007 he made a mistake. He had been further interrogated by the Home Office. After one of these sessions, his friend and supporter Andy Iliff tried to persuade Joseph to be more explicit to the authorities about the violence he had lived through in Liberia. These memories were too much for Joseph. Sufferers from PTSD constantly try to evade the memories that rage around their heads. Some try to blot it out with alcohol. Some simply run away. Joseph did the latter. He went to stay with friends in London and was not caught until 2010. The Home Office has used this as a stick to beat him with ever since, saying it is evidence of his criminality. What he did was understandable given the circumstances. The Home Office do not accord Joseph any sympathy over his problem. According to Dr. Claudia Herbert, the Managing Director and Clinical Director of the Oxford Development Centre Limited, a specialist organisation in the treatment of stress and trauma, leaving PTSD untreated has severe implications for the sufferer. She asserts that PTSD is treatable, but the treatment is highly specialised, and in the case of complex PTSD, which would include Joseph's case, there is no quick fix solution. Treatment needs to be individually tailored to each person's window of tolerance, and can therefore take considerable time and specialist expertise. Dr. Herbert, who is the author of several books on trauma, is regularly consulted by the press and advises several organisations, including police and emergency services, on matters of trauma, also said that unprocessed memories of traumatic events will impact on the subject if left untreated. PTSD does not always appear immediately after the event, but may take months to manifest itself. As you have already heard, diagnosed by experts, Joseph Eros has severe post-traumatic stress disorder and presents a high risk of suicide. Joseph has been looked after by two people in South Wales who work with asylum seekers, Andy Iliff and Curtis Haynes. I interviewed Curtis recently and asked him what he thought caused Joseph's acute post-traumatic stress disorder.
Well, I definitely believe it was the physical trauma. I believe he went through torture back in Liberia, which obviously then caused a mental problem, depression, panic attacks, anxiety disorder, things of that sort of nature. And then fleeing here, it was the constant worry of never knowing when he was going to go back.
From this point, he was shunted around the country several times. He spent time in London, Coventry, Manchester, Birmingham and Strathclyde in Scotland. Each time he was moved, he had to find a new solicitor and develop a new relationship, which he also found extremely distressing. Fortunately, now he has a stable relationship with a London solicitor with whom he feels really comfortable. In 2012, whilst in one of several periods of custody, Joseph was taken to a hospital within the Surrey and Sussex National Health Trust for treatment of his PTSD and for a sudden attack of Bell's palsy. He was in the hospital for 7 days. He was kept under close scrutiny and manacled to his bed 24 hours a day for the 7 days. He could not turn over in bed and had to ask permission each time he wanted to use the toilet facilities. This treatment caused him severe stress and exacerbated his already serious PTSD. He complained to the authorities of the NHS Trust and received the most astonishing reply. The early part of the letter apologises to Joseph for his concerns over his treatment by the Trust. Curtis, would you read the third paragraph of the letter they sent him?
Of course. I do understand that you're upset by the way in which you were detained and of course empathise with you. However, I can advise you that the medical team have no authority to restrain you under the law. The restraints used would have been determined by the officers accompanying you, and I would recommend that you direct your questions to them in order to get an appropriate answer.
This fairly shifts the blame from the NHS Trust onto the police. However, it is the final paragraph of the letter that contains the astonishing section. Again, Curtis, could you read that fourth paragraph, please?
Of course. The Trust's medical team would not make suggestions to the detaining officers unless there was a strong medical need to do so, which there was not in your case. I am advised that your medical notes do not record any discussions in relation to this matter.
So, Curtis, how do you feel about that final paragraph?
Well, 2 points are raised here. Point number one being is the medical staff did not deem it to be unhealthy for Joseph Eros to be chained to a bed for 24 hours a day whilst suffering from PTSD. Point number two is they never discussed it, or if they did, it certainly wasn't recorded in Joseph's notes.
I find that absolutely incredible. Is that the way that you found Joseph was generally treated by the authorities?
Well, unfortunately, I have to say yes.
In 2012, Joseph was released from custody yet again and put on an electronic tag, another source of distress for him. According to government figures, putting a prisoner on a tag saves £1,200 per month over keeping him in prison. Joseph has been given no support whatsoever, either for food, healthcare or clothing. Additionally, he must report to a designated centre once a week to verify his presence. His designated centre is quite a distance from where he lives. He receives no financial assistance for these journeys. Surely, for dignity's sake, £50 a week taken from the money saved by the tag would give Joseph Eros some dignity whilst the UK authorities do nothing to sort out his situation. The electronic tag is administered by G4S. Whilst on the tag, Joseph was regularly telephoned in the early hours of the morning, allegedly to verify his location, the very reason why he was wearing the tag. Each time Joseph was in his designated house. When challenged about this harassment, the officer involved said, "You were not moving." Joseph replied, "No, I was trying to sleep." Again, this cavalier treatment of an ill and destitute human being was disgraceful. Since 2012, Joseph has been living at the Kingdom Culture Chapel International in Abbey Wood, East London, under the guardianship of Pastor Denson Osato Efianai, the senior pastor. Without this help, Joseph would indeed have been homeless and destitute. Only by the provision provided by the pastor and his church is Joseph able to survive at all. I think one of the most interesting questions to ask is, what criteria do the government use to determine whether a person may stay in the UK or be deported?
Okay, if you want to, well, you could call it a criteria. There is something called the 1951 UN Convention on Refugees, and what the convention states that a person can claim asylum based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, and that their country is unable to protect them. And this is the main act that the UK government is using to make a decision on an asylum claim. People would come in. The process is normally that people come in, whether it's through the borders, whether it's through Heathrow, whether it's through Calais, and they say, "I would like to claim asylum." And the UKBA will say, "Fine," and they will have to take their information, take their details, and they claim on any of these areas, which is race, religion. They can say, it depends on what sort of persecution that they're going through. They claim on this, and that's the criteria the UKBA uses. In a case like Joseph, where his case is totally different, and based on what you said about his background, he's gone through all the appeals, he's been denied, and now his own country is denying him, saying that he's not a citizen of the country. That makes it a little bit more challenging for the UKBA to assess his claim, because even if they wanted to send him back, and I say send him back, not deported, because he's not an illegal immigrant, they wouldn't have any country to send him back to, because the country he's claiming he says he's from, the country has denied him. So the problem you have is people with Joseph is the problem with his issue, not him, sorry. The problem with Joseph's issue is that the UKBA wouldn't know exactly how to send him back to his country or arrange voluntary return for him, because the country he's claiming from does not accept him. And that can create destitution with clients like that. And I wouldn't say that, I don't think that's an exception. I'm almost certain that there is a lot of people in the system, similar to Joseph, who've been in the system possibly even longer than 8 years. And they're in limbo. They really are in limbo. We had a case of a client whose country, similar to Joseph, did not accept him, and he ended up in destitution. He ended up having to need support of different people and different organizations, because he's not allowed to work. He hasn't given him status. He can't be sent back to his country, whether it's voluntary or not. And in that case, the person wanted to go back, and they couldn't. We have clients from certain countries that cannot go back, and Joseph is probably just one of those. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. His case looked like it's taking that long, mainly because it has been processed. A decision has been made. An appeals decision has been made. It's just the uniqueness of the situation is creating a problem for Joseph.
So these people are really just abandoned?
Yeah, and there's quite a few of them, and there's quite a lot of people like that in the UK. They just literally abandoned. They end up in limbo. They can't go forward and they can't go back.
No.
And that's why you have organizations calling on the UK to be able to make exceptional decisions, exceptional case decisions on their case. We've got there's two organizations that working with asylum seekers like Joseph, calling on the Stop Destitution campaign is working on that kind of case where the UKBA should just make a decision about them. Do you give them discretionary leave maybe on humanitarian grounds, so they can move on with their life and then probably review the application later?
This story, as I mentioned earlier, is not unique. In news broadcasts and TV programmes,
the Home Office and the UK Border Agency are shown trying to deal with the tide of asylum seekers and also illegal immigrants. Little is mentioned about the deliberate policy of abandonment of this enormous group of people when they fail to get asylum, but for reasons similar to Joseph, cannot be returned to the country of origin. This is an inhumane way of treating people, one that, had it been a news item from a country in other parts of the world, would have been roundly denounced by the UK government as a violation of human rights. So what is the difference here? The political parties are gearing up for the next general election. The mood in the country amongst the general population, many of whom are ignorant of the full facts, is bleak. People have little time for asylum seekers, illegal immigrants, migrant workers, and benefit cheats, by which they mean anyone on benefits. All of these are lumped in the same pot and treated with contempt. Some of these people are genuine and are desperately in need of our help. Signs are that this uncaring coalition government will use the bleak mood of the people concerning immigration to introduce even harsher measures, always a good vote catcher. This abandonment of failed asylum seekers by the Home Office does not make sense. If they are being tolerated here, however unwillingly, why not give them temporary leave to remain? The Home Office would still be in charge and could reverse it in a moment. Joseph is a quietly spoken, devout Christian who has been treated like a common criminal in this country. He has done nothing except flee from the terrors of his own country. Recently in London, a young serving soldier was attacked by two Muslim men. He was knocked down by their car, stabbed repeatedly, and almost beheaded. This act, quite rightly, caused a furore of disgust and condemnation from right-minded Britons. Yet this was a single incident, the like of which was a daily recurrence in Liberia during the time of the civil wars. All Joseph wants from the British government is this temporary leave to remain. If he was granted that, he could work, which he is desperate to do, he could study, and he would have some dignity. Here he is without any sign of being removed because they don't know where to send him. Wouldn't it make sense to give him the leave to stay and let him work, thus contributing to British society and allowing him to prove that he is a worthwhile member of that society?